Hello, calling up community. This is Claudia Alec, and today we are doing a dramaturgical assessment of a little bit of drama happening today. First, we'll start with the setting. We're in today where there are inspiring uprisings taking place on American streets across this country, protesting officers of the state murdering African Americans extrajudicially, protesting white supremacy culture and the unnecessary violence coming from white nationalism and white supremacy culture, impacting all of us in negative ways. So that's the context of why Opera in the Rock, an organization in Arkansas, an opera organization, did this statement of solidarity. Many organizations have been doing them. Let's read. We see you. We hear you. We stand with you. Big, bold, loving the white on black, very readable. This is laid out for an Instagram post. This is great for Facebook. Opera in the Rock stands in solidarity with our Black communities, our artists and crew, volunteers and patrons who have made OITR the diverse and inclusive organization it is today. Opera in the Rock. Interesting. So they've chosen to bold Black communities and diverse and inclusive. If we look at the sentence, what they're saying is they, Opera in the Rock, stand in solidarity with their Black community and the artists and crew and volunteers and the patrons who make them diverse and inclusive. Okay. And then this is followed up by them advertising their production of Puccini's Madame Butterfly returns YouTube streaming event Friday, June 12th, Sunday, June 14th. So they did this. They received reactions. They took it down. Lily Tongue Crystal, the artistic director of Theater Moo, I will leave a link to Theater Moo in the comments. Theater Moo is just great. I appreciate her sharing this with the community. And I also appreciate, because this is complicated, what they did was highly problematic. And I'm about to read their statement, which is also highly problematic. But they took down the hurtful, harmful thing that they did initially. And so we have to screen cap and study the archive. So appreciations to those who shared this. Opera in the Rock is firmly committed to diversity and inclusion in casting for all of our productions. They're firmly committed to it, okay? Madame Butterfly was originally presented in May 2019 in celebration of Asian Pacific American Heritage Month to showcase the struggle and contribution of Asian Americans in our society. Puccini's Madame Butterfly. I'm confused that they were unable to find any operas that were authored by Asian Americans or had different Asian American representation in them, but okay, let's keep going. Perhaps this was something about money. Is Puccini's Madame Butterfly free? I'm unsure about why that text was the one they felt they needed to do, since it's a problematic text. I Googled Madame Butterfly in Yellowface, and this came up, which reminded me that last year in November of 2019, I did a YouTube video talking about why Yellowface is a terrible idea and how it's ridiculous that in this day and age, we were still having that conversation. But here we are. This is what white supremacy culture does to us. We are returning once again. This is not an exercise, however, in exploring the question of why Yellowface is bad. We are not legislating or looking at that. We are simply looking at this performance of an institution attempting to perform racial solidarity, and we are seeing how that went. Okay. So they are saying that they did this production in May of 2019 to celebrate Asian Americans. All right, second paragraph. We would have loved to cast Japanese or Asian American singers, but unfortunately none auditioned for the production. Okay. Now, it's interesting Does this mean that they didn't have any other choice? They had to produce this opera. And while no one appropriate showed up to help them to produce it, because they wanted to produce it, they kept going. And they cast who showed up. Let's read what happened next. Francesca Montanaro, Montanaro, who sang the leading role, is of Jewish and Italian heritage. Now, initially, I thought to myself, well, why are you telling me this? And I realized, oh, right. It's because when I initially looked at this image, I'm an audience member. I I'm not a casting person. I'm not a person working inside that company. I'm not even a person who's inside that community. So I don't know how to read this image. I look at it and it initially and immediately reads to me as Yellowface. It feels problematic and complicated, and it gives me kind of a gross bad feeling, and I think it's like I just, there's something about it that makes me go, oh, please don't be what I think you are. This feels bad. This feels like a bad yellow face badness. But maybe you are actually an Asian person and you just read differently. But nope, that's not the case. They're letting me know that I was reading that image accurately, and this actress, I'm not sure why they feel the need to name her specifically by name, because this is their institutional thing to own, but okay, naming this person. And also naming that she's Jewish. I feel like that's strategic because the next sentence is, additionally, more than 1/3 of the cast was African American, which is also non-traditional casting for this production, as our company feels that every role should be open to artists of all races, ethnicities, and gender expressions. So that's a complex group of sentences and complex little paragraph. So basically it's saying, well, they think that, well, they've said this already, um, they are committed to diversity and inclusion in casting for all their productions. And they think that every role should be open to artists of all races, ethnicities, and gender expressions. Therefore, they should be able to cast anyone in anything, and Yellowface doesn't exist, apparently. And also, because they cast some people from a marginalized community, apparently doing misrepresentation of Asian culture is not a bad thing. So they're using the argument that diversity disallows discernment. That if you want to have diversity, it means you're not allowed to have any type of discernment, and you must allow all of everything. It is all inclusion and no exclusion. It's a complicated argument that's being made here. Very tricksy. White supremacy culture 101. Let's keep going. It's a powerful story of love and betrayal that includes themes still relevant today, such as colonialism, traditional roles of women, interracial relationships, racism, and immigration. Okay, so it's in this sentence, they are answering the question that was raised for me up here. Why Madame Butterfly to do this labor? It's fascinating that, again, this sentence is down here because my question was, okay, let's keep going. And I'm assuming the rest of this paragraph is supposed to be talking about why this text, but no, our costumer was of Japanese heritage. So she had personal insight into how the clothing and accessories should be worn, and even provided guidance on how the cast should walk and carry themselves in accordance with Japanese culture. Interesting. Okay, well, first of all, that's her job. The costumer should obviously understand the clothing and accessories that should be worn, that are appropriate for the production that they're doing the costume design for. But okay, I think the argument that's being made here is that the costumer was Japanese, and because the costumer was Japanese, that meant that there was some sort of layer of the authenticity inside the production, and therefore their yellow face was not offensive or problematic. I'm not sure exactly what bringing her up is doing, except it feels like they've now This predominantly white institution has a Jewish woman, a third of the African American, a third of the cast, all the African Americans. They've lined them up, and this costume designer, this Japanese costume designer. Now let's see, what's the next sentence? We also hired a professional makeup and hair artist from New York to ensure that the styling was culturally appropriate and respectful to highlight our multiracial cast while using their natural hair. Complicated. Because this using their natural hair, that makes me think that what actually happened was that they did not have somebody inside their, like, how long has this company been around? And they've got a third of the cast that's African American, but they don't have somebody who can work with natural hair. Like, this is, I've got question marks around this. I'm not exactly sure what they're talking about. But perhaps what they're saying is they recognized that what they were doing was Yellowface. And so they hired someone special to help try and make what they were doing not Yellowface by, like, you know, making sure the makeup and the hair somehow made it not Yellowface. Next sentence. The chairman of the board of opera in the chairman of the board of Opera in the Rock is himself Asian American and was intimately involved with this production every step in the creative process to ensure it not only celebrated Asian culture, but represented the diversity of our arts community. Wow. That's complicated. I think I might absorb this messaging differently were I to read it directly from the chairman of the board. But again, this feels like a white dominant institution, and this feels like some language and authorship that is white that has now listed a lot of other marginalized communities that apparently are meant to, because of their inclusion in the project, are meant to act as camouflage or antidote to Yellowface. And at its core, Yellowface is well, it's a cultural production that's profiting off the misrepresentation of Asian people by white people. So, white people are profiting off of the misrepresentation of Asian people. And in this context, they have now claimed that it's because they were actually celebrating Asian people. And also, they wanted us to absorb this moment of problematic white supremacy culture and Yellowface. They want us to absorb it as solidarity with people of color. Also, I'm looking at this and I'm realizing that, again, this is me guessing, but the chairman of the board is an Asian American, and it's like, okay, you want to do this. I feel stewardship over this organization that I care about. I'm here, I'm the chairman of the board. Let me try and help. I have witnessed, and I've also personally been involved in a lot of moments where a predominantly white institution tagged me as someone who was involved and invested in their institution to try and help undo some moment of white supremacy culture. And in my inclusion in the process, I was meant to help make that moment less racist or to undo the racism that the moment held. But oftentimes it was a complicated and silly exercise because they didn't want to stop doing the thing they were doing. Like, generally, the resolution or the solution to the problem was for them to stop doing the racist thing. But the answer wasn't for us to do a bunch of extra labor to make the racist thing less racist. It was just to stop doing the racist thing. And I keep going back to the question of why do people keep doing Madame Butterfly? I'm just trying to figure out, like, what is the deal? Why? What on earth? What is the point? Is it really that good? Or is it that it's done a lot? Because a classic is a classic, not because it's the best thing, but because it's been done a lot. We've experienced it a whole bunch over time. And I wonder, is now the time to make new classics, to choose new work to support? So I am in solidarity and support with Ariel Estrada and the Asian theater community, who tagged and emailed their funders, Arkansas Arts Council, Opera America, Arkansas Blue Cross Blue Shield, and the John and Robin Horn Foundation. You know what? Opera on the Rock, we see you, and we heard you, and perhaps funding might need to go a different way. I don't know. All right, calling up community. This was a dramaturgical assessment of an emergent performance. This is Act 1. I look forward to witnessing Act 2.